Hey guys, welcome back to a short news summary for the day. All right, if you missed our stream, be sure to hit that subscribe and notification bell so you're notified every time I go live. I go live most days, Monday to Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right. If you're new to the channel, I cover news, finance, and stocks, real estate, anything I find interesting. All right, and I usually keep a lot of videos that I just do reviews on. I do portfolio updates. So if you're into that kind of stuff, definitely check me out. All right, so with that out of the way, let's take a look at the portfolio and go through the news. So today the portfolio is sitting kind of frothy. All right, I am up and I'm only down $26,000. I was down at one point $70,000 during the most brutal times of this trade tariff war. But it looks like things are coming, things are starting to finally look green. Things are starting to finally recover. So this is a welcome sign. All right, for one of the portfolios, which is on Robinhood, this is where I keep all my high yield ETFs. Okay, I do reviews on this portfolio quite frequently. So if you want to check that stuff out, check out the videos. But the only new update I have to this portfolio is I made a purchase for 20 new shares of Chippy, which is a YieldMax Semiconductor ETF. And I'm going to explain the semiconductor stuff here in a moment. No other changes to any other positions, all right? So I'm still holding PLTW, which is a Palantir Weekly Pay ETF, and NVW, which is Nvidia Weekly Pay ETF from Roundhill, as well as Xpy and XDT, which are cover call ETFs for the S&P 500. So we had a fantastic recovery on this portfolio. As you guys can see, this jump right here. And it looks like we're continuing to recover in the overnight. So hopefully we can keep this momentum. This is all based on some news that came out, which I'll cover here in just a moment. And of course, I like to show everyone I am using margin, all right? I am using, I don't know if you can call it a healthy amount of margin, but I am using a excessive amount of margin, okay? This is like smoking cigarettes. It's good for you, but it's not good for you. All right, so buffer or margin status, I'm low risk. I still have a lot of margin buffer. I would have to see a portfolio decline of $37,000 before I hit a margin call. Luckily and hopefully we don't go that way, all right? That doesn't happen. It came close, not gonna lie, came very close, but it looks like we're recovering very nicely. For M1 Finance, I keep a portfolio on here as well. This is where I keep all my REITs and a tech-focused ETF. This is where a bulk of the portfolio lives. And as you guys can see, REITs have been recovering very nicely. I have a tech-focused ETF, the Vanguard Information Tech ETF. I dropped $170,000 in here. You guys can see that right there, $170,000. And this thing just dropped, and it continued dropping. At one point, I saw a decline of $50,000 on this portfolio, down to $124,000. It was really brutal. It was really crappy. But it looks like we're on the come up, and we've been recovering ever since. So maybe this is that V-shaped recovery we keep hearing about. So this is really good. I really am happy that this portfolio is starting to recover, and we are not heading for new lows, at least not right now. So news came out last week of Trump and Starmer basically having a US-UK trade deal. All right, this was viewed as positive for the markets. The markets rallied. I didn't cover this last week because I did not stream, but I am covering it today. All right. So there's two sides of this camp. There's some that don't like the deal, and especially automakers, they weren't very favorable of this deal. But this was viewed positively by the markets, right? This is just adding to certainty for the future. This is just adding to less fear in the market that we're going to be in a prolonged trade war. So this is very good news. The markets rallied, and we had a great day. All right, this was the big one. All right, this is the one I've been covering for a very long time, and I was waiting for, right, when on Friday I published a video that of my buys that I was going to do. And I made a couple buys into Nvidia, into Chippy, and into PLTW, or Palantir, right? Scott Bessent and Jonathan Greer, or Jameson Greer, I keep getting his name messed up, but the U.S. trade representative, were heading to Switzerland to talk with the Chinese on a possible, negotiation on, just to get more clarity, some more fidelity on what both sides want, right? So they came to the table, they talked, and this news this was the biggest news this week, and it was great that it happened on a Monday. All right, U.S. and China agree to slash tariffs for 90 days in major trade breakthrough. All right, this is the one that the markets were waiting on. They both lowered their reciprocal tariffs down to 10%. Okay, the United States is still going to tariff China, for their fentanyl stuff. So technically they're at 30%, but really they're at 10%, right? Because there's a lot of goods that are coming from China into the U.S. markets that don't have fentanyl. All right, unless plastics and batteries and electronics are having all that fentanyl in there. I doubt it, but we're doing pretty well there. Okay, so this U.S. and China agreement to kind of halt and freeze the trade war that we have going on was an absolute welcome sign, and the markets reacted very, very positively. All right, so the Treasury yield soared, and on hope a recession will be avoided after a temporary halt on the China-U.S. trade deal, or because of the China-U.S. trade deal, right? So again, the market's viewing this very well, and I would suspect that J.P. Morgan Chase, the Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Vanguard, everyone else, all these large institutions will start revising their recession, forecasts. I could probably predict that, they'll start lowering it to maybe like a 30% chance of a recession hitting this year, right? Expect to see more and more pundits come out saying, oh yeah, recession's not going to happen, right? Everything's looking good again. Everything's peachy. So we'll see what happens. But this lends to something else that came out, right? Odds of a rate cut from the Federal Reserve in the near term are also dropping, as there may be less of a reason for the central bank to intervene and boost the labor market if the U.S. avoids a recession. The Fed fund rate futures market implies just an 11.3% likelihood of a reduction in June per the CME's Fed Watch tool. So this is big news. I don't think people are aware of this yet, or really taking this into consideration, that the Fed is not going to lower rate in June. And they might, there was a camp earlier in the year that believed that we were going to get a Fed rate cut in May, and we were going to get 2 or possibly 3 this year. But because economic data is coming out and it's looking really good, inflation's coming down, job market's looking good, everything is looking good, we may not get any kind of rate cut from the federal funds rate, right? So there's going to be a huge focus on the 10-year Treasury. Again, Scott Bessent, Secretary of Treasury, wants to work with the Trump administration to bring that down. That is a big deal to bring that one down because, again, there's still a lot of real estate that needs to refinance. There's still a lot of short-term debt that needs to get refinanced. So we'll see what happens, right? So from the benefit of the U.S. and China trade talks, right, slashing tariffs, bringing it all down, which we kind of already covered, so I'm going to just breeze through this. The one sector that's going to benefit or could potentially benefit from this is the semiconductor space. Relief from tariffs could ease supply chain disruptions and cut costs for chip makers. Specifically, tariff relief on China-related components may help ease production bottlenecks, leading to improved production capacity and lower costs. All right, we saw Nvidia jump 4%, AMD jump 5%, Marvell jump 7.5%, Taiwan Semiconductor jump 4%, ASML jump 4.5%, Intel jump 4%. The semiconductor space just had a great rally. If we're looking at a near peer, we can look at the VanEck Semiconductor ETF. We saw a huge jump of almost 6% on the open, right? That was crazy, and it ended 6.3% on the day. So it had a really good rally. Okay, and you guys know that I just made some purchases into Chippy. All right, this is the YieldMax Semiconductor Portfolio Option Income ETF. All right, I made purchases on Friday and again on Monday. So I just want to show you guys, these are some of the holdings that this ETF has. It has Nvidia, it has Broadcom, it has Taiwan Semiconductor, right? It has some of these larger semiconductor companies in this ETF. And I'm very bullish on semiconductors. All right, I'm very bullish on the sector as a whole. I think this ETF is going to do very well. As a matter of fact, I know it is because it has appreciated in value since inception by 23%. All right, so this ETF is doing very well. It's not suffering from NAV erosion. It's not suffering from any of the other kind of ailments that some of these other cover call ETFs have, because this has direct exposure to the underliers, right? Underliers like Broadcom, underliers like Nvidia, like Qualcomm, Texas Instruments, Taiwan Semiconductor. All right. Nvidia was in the news today as well. Nvidia in focus as Morgan Stanley says April Taiwan data shows significant improvements for the company. So basically the net of this is that Nvidia is still shipping out their flagship product, the Blackwell chip or the GB200. Okay. So Nvidia is still making a lot of sales for this chip. Companies like CoreWeave, which we've covered on this channel before, it's a data center and has a partnership with Nvidia. They have been purchasing a lot of their hardware. XAI, which is a Elon Musk owned company, they are also purchasing a lot of GPUs from Nvidia as well. So this can be seen as a good tailwind for Nvidia and for the company. All right, so that'll pretty much do it for this news stream summary. So if you guys enjoyed this, be sure to hit that like, that subscribe if you aren't already. And just for you guys who made it this far, I also run a Discord server. All right, so if you guys want to join, the link will be down below in the comments section. And if you made it this far, comment Nvidia, comment Chippy, comment Semiconductor. What semiconductors are you invested into? Are you bullish on semiconductors? All right, let me know down below in the comments. I will see you guys in the next video.